On today's episode, we're going to show you how to make your first $100,000 as a consultant. Whether you're considering starting a consultancy or whether you've been running your consulting practice for any good length of time, today's episode is going to show you either things to get started on or things to go back to make an additional $100,000 in your consulting business. Now, if you haven't started your consulting business before, you probably haven't done these things, and so these are the things that I would suggest that you do if you want to get started and get that first $100,000 potentially even before you leave the current business or the current employment situation that you are currently in. Now, if we haven't met before, my name is Russell Pearson. I am the founder of the Forge Business Program and the Consulting Guild, and I've been working in the space of promotion, sales, and marketing for over 30 years. And right now, I work primarily with consultants to help them grow their consulting businesses. Now, before we get started, I want to answer a question that often comes up about starting a consulting business. Do I need a certification or a qualification to be a practicing consultant? And the short answer is you don't. There are all sorts of qualifications you can get. There are also certifications that you can get that may help you in your expertise and in the process of being a consultant, but it isn't necessary for you to get those to start a consulting business. The one thing that you are required to have to run a consulting business is some form of process or expertise to enable you to help those people that you aim to serve. And so let's start there. Let's start with what it is that you really should have before you do start your consulting business. Well, number one is you should have some problems that you are very good at solving. Now, that could be because of your experience. You've just been very experienced with solving these problems. That could be because of your expertise and the learning that you've got, ideally put into practice. So you've got some wisdom about how you go about solving these things. But ideally, it's to have a confidence that you know that this is a problem that people have and that you have solved it before. And in fact, ideally, you know how to solve it for many different types of people and many different types of situations. Now, if you've got a very specific set of expertise, then it's just focusing on those specific people who would have that specific problem. And I love specific problems. It means that the promises that you make are more likely to be kept. So I would recommend to anybody that rather than have big promises, actually work on much more specific and clear small promises will enable you to build a reputation of doing very good work and actually getting successful outcomes. But if we can create a list of what are the problems that we solve, it's not necessarily about what are the actions that we can do. It's not necessarily about the processes or frameworks that we have. It's definitely not about the tools that we have. It's about how do we take someone from a problem state that they're in, ideally a problem state that they're aware of, which means that they know that they've got a problem. Usually that's called a symptom. It is the symptom that they're aware of. They might not know the underlying cause, which is why they haven't fixed it, but they're problem aware, which means they're symptomatic. We know what the symptoms are that people are suffering from, and we know how to get them to a place where the opposite is true. So they could be in a state of overwhelm, for instance, and we get them into a state of clarity. We just need to take our symptom statement, flip it over just the way we would with a coin. I'll show you this one. So there's our symptom. We literally give it the opposite, and we can define what is the outcome that they want. Maybe the symptom is, I can't find great talent for my business. Outcome is, I can find great talent for my business. It is as simple as that. So what problems are we very good at solving? Create a list. That's what you need to do when you start your consulting business. Now, from that list, we say who has these problems the most. Ideally, we will get a list of the different types of people who have these problems, and we can start selecting which ones we want to actually work with. Now, the idea is not to go, let's work with everybody, because especially at the start of the business, that will send you on many different directions and will be very time consuming. What you want to do throughout the course of your business is make sure that you're leveraging your time and you're leveraging your energy and focusing it in an area so that you can get better results faster. You can find out if this audience really needs what you've got, and then what is the message that I would actually say to engage them to take a step with us. And we'll talk about all the details of what you need to put in place to run a business. But number one, what are the problems we solve and who has those specific problems? The next thing is actually a small step, but a big piece that we need to make sure is in place, which is, can we transact with people. So if we can't take money, then it is very difficult for us to actually run a business. Now, most businesses need some form of structure. Now, depending on where you are in the world, you will have your different options, whether you're a sole trader, whether you're a company, whether you are some form of trust. There are all sorts of different models that you can use to run your business. But let's say, for instance, you're starting as a sole trader. You don't need much. You just need your own name. We take that, we register it, we get an Australian business number if we work in Australia, or a different number depending on where you are in the world, just something to tie the tax against it, because there will be some form of tax in most places in the world that you need to declare this income with. But to simplify, we have our entity. We then need to have a place that we can transact, which means we need a bank account. We need a bank account that money can go into. My recommendation is to have a separate bank account for your business, separated from any personal accounts. It's just going to make accounting and transparency for tax purposes and all those sort of things much easier for you in the long run. As an aside, I think having an accountant, and having an accountant that is a business accountant, is a very smart thing to do. Now, you don't need that necessarily at the very start of your business, but it's certainly something that I would engage with within the first year of your business. Someone to help you put the structures in place so that you can start taking this business more seriously is something that I would look at there. So we've got the entity that we're running, we've got a bank account, that people can put money into it, and we find ourselves an accountant who can support us in making sure all those structures are implemented correctly. Now, a way to take money. Now, you can just put an invoice out has the bank account details, and people put that money into the bank account, and then you start doing the work. Now, a lot of people will put an invoice in after they do the work. I don't believe that is necessary, and I know that because that's not what I do. I used to think that's necessary. I used to think that we had to do the work and then I invoice for the work. But in actual fact, you can invoice for the work before the work, get a deposit at the very least, and get started on doing that work. Now, how you do that is completely your preference, but you do need to have a way that people can pay you. Now, whether that be by invoice, whether that be by a credit card, or any other payment system that you put in place, that's pretty much all you need from a technology basis. How can I create a mechanism that they can pay me money? But once you've done that, then it's less about the money and the transaction and more about the value that you're going to create. So let's talk about the value you're going to create. There are really 3 ways to create value for your clients, and they are: number 1, make them money. All right, that's number 1. You can absolutely make people money. You can also save them money. Yep. So you can save them money as a way of, it's a different way of making money, but there's making money and saving money. And then finally, you can improve the quality of their life. So improve quality of life. One of those 3 things is going to be how you create value for your consulting practice. Now, within that, there is a nice little golden rule that you can look at when it comes to pricing. How much value am I creating? Can I quantify that value? And therefore, what is the value of the service that I'm providing? All right, so a little bit of a formula there. When I've asked people in the past how much they would pay to receive $100, I have had right up to $99.99 that people would pay to get that $100 back. Now, the majority of people, when it comes to actually spending money, a lot of people will say things, but when it comes to actually spending money, a good rule of thumb is 10% or 20% of the return they're going to get back is what they should ideally feel comfortable in paying. Now, there are all sorts of different people and all sorts of different backgrounds and experiences, and some people will be living in scarcity where they really don't want to give anybody any money. They want to get everything for free, and there are those people who are really ready to invest in their future and they're willing to pay much more. Your clientele is going to be somewhere between those 2 places. A good rule of thumb is 10% of value or 5% of value. So how do we go about charging that? Well, a good rule of thumb is to charge 1/10 or 1/20 of the overall value that you create for them, which means that we need to quantify that value. Now, when it comes to making money, That's a lot easier to quantify value. If someone's going to make $100,000, then it's $100,000 is the value. Now, to get more specific, we really want to, how are they going to make $100,000 of profit, especially if they're in a business? Or how are they going to save $100,000 in profit, just in this example? With the example of 1/10 or 1/20th, ideally we could charge to get them that extra $100,000, $10,000, or 1/20th, $5,000 to achieve that outcome. Most people would be quite comfortable with that. Now, you could charge right up to 50%, you could charge even higher. It's completely up to you, your confidence level, and how likely you are to achieve the outcome and how believable it is that you're going to achieve the outcome for the person who is choosing to pay you, as to how much they will pay and to the value they perceive. That's a key part of the process. When it comes to quality of life, that's a little bit more complex. We need to work with the prospect to have them identify and quantify for us, what is this change in quality of life worth? Now, there's all sorts of different quality of life changes. You could be going from helping someone relocate their home to maybe get off drugs, like to help their child who has a major learning difficulty. There are so many different things that you could be helping them with, and it really comes down to where is the value in the eye of the beholder to define how much it is worth. Now, on the flip side, you can define how much your time and your attention is worth. And if you are inundated with people who are coming out of the woodwork to work with you, now probably not at the start, and we'll talk about that in just a moment, but let's say over time, your value of your own time will rise. And so if there are 30 people trying to get a hold of the 1 hour with you, then almost like a bidding system in your head, whether you go, well, this is worth 5,000, people go, well, I'm willing to pay 10,000, well, I'm willing to pay 20,000. You can, once you've got a lot of opportunity, you can simply start raising your prices until the market can't bear it anymore. And then you can either stay where that is, sit below it a little bit, completely choice is up to you. But how do you go about actually getting that first $100,000? Well, if the value is high enough, you can get that first $100,000 in a single transaction. But what tends to happen is that you will get it through multiple transactions with potentially a single client. So to give you an example, we might take an engagement with someone. Let's say we're helping them in a business, go from one place to another. We start with a strategic piece. Now, I'm going to start low end because the numbers I'm going to talk about are probably lower in the industry, just to give you a sense of how you can get to that first $100,000 without having to charge high or potentially outrageous fees. Now, I have no problem with whatever you want to charge, but I just want to start small so you can at least see how it's done. You might do a strategy piece with that business, and that strategy might be worth $1,000 for you to run some form of strategic facilitation for them. That strategy session is the only thing you may charge for, that $1,000. Now, from that, though, a plan is formed, and majority of times people will working with you on the strategy. If they like working with you, and if you like working with them, you'll decide to help them in actually getting that strategy delivered. And let's say it was a short-term strategy, maybe 3 months. You might charge $1,000 for the initial strategy, and then you might charge $3,000 each month to help them run that out. Now, there's two reasons for me giving those numbers. Number one, it's a low-end commitment. These are not big numbers. And your strategy could be worth $10,000, $20,000, $100,000. And each of those implementation steps could actually be $100,000, if not more. Absolutely they can if there is enough value. And again, how much you're helping them increase their value, whether that be the money, the savings, or the quality of life. But just taking that simple example. So I got 1, 3, 3, 3. Other reason I picked those is because it equals 10. And that just makes it easy for us to do the math. And so let's say that gives us a $10,000 engagement, which if we want to hit our first 100,000 means we need 10 of those within a year to hit that $100,000 milestone. And then from there, the opportunities are for us to take. We can raise our prices, we can work with more people, we get to decide and select how we want to run our consultancy. But even just taking those 10, now that we know how we're going to make the money, we've got a way to transact, we know what problems we're solving, and we know who has those problems. The key for us as a consultant to make that $100,000 is to be in a position to make the sale. Now, the sale means to make a transaction, and for a consultant, a person who is selling expertise, that space, that point of sale is a conversation. And so your ability to get in a conversation with a person who specifically has the problem that you solve, and to talk about how you can help them take steps to solve that problem, is your process. Now, let's talk about the numbers that you might need to hit to make that happen. Now, you may talk to 10 people who have that problem before one of them says yes. So that's a 10% conversion rate. And so if you have to speak to 10 people to get one of them to say yes, then you know how many you're going to need to speak to get 10 clients, because it's 10 times 10, which is 100. So to get those 10 clients at the $10,000 engagement, to get the $100,000 for the year, all you need to do is find and speak to 100 people who are aware that they have that problem and they want to get it solved. That's it. A lot of people think I need to create a website. A lot of people think I need to show my expertise. But the key in showing your expertise is to find the person who has the problem. Talk to them about the problem that they're having. Through the questions you ask, they realize you're an expert because you are asking relevant, topical questions to the problem that they're experiencing, which means that they now realize that you know how to solve it. And then it's just about helping them take that first step. So I talked about the $10,000 engagement, which had $1,000 in strategy and then $3,000 each month to help them actually execute it. All you're doing is making that first $1,000 sale. So if you can make that first $1,000 sale potentially 10 times, maybe you have to make it 20 times because they don't end up running their plan out. It depends on the business model and how you're actually going to run it and your results. But based on the basics that we just talked about, if you have a 10% conversion rate by speaking to the people who have the problem, are aware of it and want to get rid of it, then you just need to speak to 100 people to make your $100,000 offer, because 1 in 10 will say yes to becoming your client. So when you want to get in conversations with 100 new people, there are 2 really easy ways to do that. And one of them is by going to the link that's on the comments of this video that'll take you to a free downloadable that you can get that's all about how to find large groups of ideal clients. Now with that one, it's basically you going to where they are. And so we use the process to find them, but also then to go to where they are so we can get to meet them. So that'll be things like associations, networking groups, other events that you might go to where these people are hanging out. So go and have that look at that download for the first version. And the second version is something we call referral by proxy. There are all sorts of people in your life that you already know. Now, these people are access to those people who have the problems that you solve. And so really it's about having a conversation with people you know, describing the individual that you're looking to speak to or looking to help, and say, who comes to mind? Once you've done that with enough people, they will share people that they know. Now, you might only get you might have to speak to 100 people to get referred through to maybe 5, okay? That might be as low as that, but it's a fantastic way to start because it means that you can go out today, speak to 100 people you know, and already have 5 prospects before you get started. You might find through doing that process that your numbers are much higher than what I just gave you. And what I just gave you. And so by using the benchmark that I've just given, you might then find out through the experience of doing the work that you have a very different benchmark, and you can base your activities off the new numbers which are yours. Now, the more that you do these things, the better you get at actually describing the specific market and also having the confidence to ask in the right ways. There is no specific script, though. I would just suggest something along the lines of, how are you? How's life? Have a great conversation with them. And then before you leave the conversation, by the way, I've started a new thing, doing this. I'm looking for this specific type of person. Who comes to mind? That's a much easier way of actually starting a conversation. It means you're not selling to people. It means that you're not feeling ick when you're going to speak to people. You can actually just have a nice conversation, and if it absolutely makes sense, say by the way at the end, and then do the ask. That way you can get introduced to a lot more people without you having to know them first. It means you're also not going to work up to strangers. Now, just the final part with that, if they do know the person, if someone does come to mind, then I would ask for an email introduction so that you can potentially catch up for a quick conversation. That's all you're looking to do because, again, conversations are the way in to your point of sale. And so the by proxy campaign, referral by proxy, or if you want to, you can find these large groups of ideal clients by going to where they specifically are. So this is not about just doing advertising randomly. This is about going to interest groups, to professional associations, to places where these people talk about those specific problems that you solve. And you may go there and just network with them, or who knows, you might speak on their stages and a lot of people will come up and ask you questions. It's completely up to you. If you're wondering where else you can learn about the other steps, the other things, the marketing aspects, the tactics that you can use, what is relevant when it comes to running a consulting business, what are things that you can ignore and what are the things that you need to focus on? Well, you may be interested in the Consulting Guild. We currently have the Guild open and we are taking new members. The Consulting Guild gives you access to all the information that we deliver for consultants around the world to help them build their consulting business and then grow it to a select consulting business, allowing them to select whether they want to run it as a business that they will exit and which it will run on its own, or whether they'll choose to run it as a practice, which is a profitable enterprise that runs about them. So the choice will be completely up to you once you get above that first $100,000. So if you're interested to know how you can get started, then you can go to the link below, which is theconsultingguild.com, and you can share your expression of interest and we can get you all the details and see if it is right for you. This has been episode 87 of the Your Consulting Business podcast. My name's Russell Pearson. Until next time, stay passionate and I will catch you on the next one. Bye for now.